You know, when I first saw those headlines about Diddy and all these lawsuits, um, I gotta admit, like, my first thought was just, ugh, another celebrity scandal. Here we go again.
Yeah.
But the more I actually, like, looked into it, the
Hmm.
more I realized that this case is like anything but ordinary.
Yeah.
And at this time, it's not even just about, like, the accusations themselves.
Right.
It's about the person who is making them, Anna Cain. Now, she's the ex-wife of NHL star Evander Cain,
Oh, wow.
and he's had, you know,
Oh, yeah.
his own share of
It's
controversies.
like two worlds are colliding, you know? You've got Diddy, this like larger than life music mogul.
Right.
And then you have Anna Cain, who's already familiar with the public eye, but for very different reasons. It makes you wonder how her past experiences might actually influence how people view these accusations that she's making.
Exactly. And that's actually what we're going to unpack in this deep dive today.
Hmm.
We're going to look at the allegations against Diddy, specifically focusing on Anna Cain's lawsuit, and try to understand, the bigger picture of what this all means.
You know?
So let's start with the lawsuit itself. Anna Cain is accusing Diddy of some, like, really serious things.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about accusations of sex trafficking, gang rape, and drugging.
Wow.
And to add another layer of complexity, these allegations go back decades to when Anna Cain was only 17 years old.
17 years old. That detail really floored me when I first read that. According to the lawsuit, she met Diddy through the then president of Bad Boy Entertainment, Harvey Pierre. And get this, she claims that he invited her to fly on a private jet
Wow.
to meet Diddy in New York.
Hmm.
I mean, what 17-year-old wouldn't be tempted by that?
Right.
But it also raises some serious red flags, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It goes without saying that flying a minor across state lines for a meeting like that, it raises a whole host of ethical and potentially legal issues. And it's at Diddy's recording studio in New York where the alleged assault is said to have happened.
Now, you've got a lot of experience with cases like this. How difficult is it to actually prove allegations like these, especially when they happened so long ago?
Yeah, you're hitting on one of the biggest challenges in these types of cases. Proving something that allegedly happened decades ago is incredibly difficult. Memories fade, evidence can be lost or corrupted, and witnesses may be unavailable or unreliable. It's not impossible, but it requires a mountain of compelling evidence to convince a jury.
And speaking of evidence, there's mention of photographing evidence in the lawsuit, right? Photos of Anna Cain at the studio, although her face is blurred.
Yes, those photos could potentially be a key piece of the puzzle. If they can be authenticated and placed in the right context, they could help corroborate Anna Cain's account of events. But it's important to note that photographic evidence alone rarely tells the whole story. It needs to be supported by other forms of evidence, like witness testimonies or documentation.
So how has Diddy responded to all of this?
Diddy has vehemently denied all the charges against him.
Okay.
And in his defense, he's pointed to other lawsuits against him, claiming that people are just trying to take advantage of his wealth and fame for a quick payday.
But wouldn't that imply that anyone accusing a wealthy individual is automatically, like, suspect?
Yeah.
I mean, how do we balance the need to protect the accused with the need to believe survivors?
That's a question that comes up often in high-profile cases like this.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we have a legal system that presumes innocence until proven guilty.
Right.
But on the other hand, we also have a responsibility to listen to accusers and take their allegations seriously.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate balance, and there are no easy answers.
And to complicate matters even further, Diddy's current legal situation isn't exactly helping his case.
Mm-hmm.
He was recently denied bail and is currently in federal prison on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering.
Now, you might be wondering what racketeering has to do with any of this.
Yeah?
In simple terms, it involves engaging in a pattern of illegal activity as part of an organized enterprise. In Diddy's case, the charges allege that he used his position and influence to engage in a pattern of criminal behavior, including the alleged sex trafficking.
Wow, this is already so much more complicated than I initially thought. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to Anna Cain for a moment. What I find particularly interesting about this case is that she's not just an accuser. She's also the ex-wife of Evander Cain, who, as we mentioned earlier, has his own history of controversy.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because when you have two individuals with such complex and often controversial pasts, it inevitably raises questions about how their histories might influence public perception and even the legal proceeding.
Okay, so we've got these serious accusations against Diddy. the challenge of proving historical allegations, photographic evidence, Diddy's denials, and his other legal battles. And then you throw in the whole Evander Kane connection. It's a lot to unpack, and we've only just scratched the surface. We'll be right back after a quick break.
It really is, and that's why this case is so captivating. It really forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about how we even, view accusations, especially when you have these individuals involved with their own baggage.
You mentioned Evander Kane's controversies earlier.
Right.
For those who might not be familiar with him, could you give us a quick rundown of what he's been accused of?
Yeah, so Evander Kane has faced a number of accusations over the years, ranging from domestic violence and sexual assault to even allegations that he threw NHL games.
Really?
Now, it's crucial to emphasize that those were accusations, not convictions.
Okay.
He has denied all of them, and none of these allegations were ever proven in a court of law.
Okay, but even without convictions, those accusations still paint a pretty damaging picture, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
How can we ignore that context when we're evaluating Anna Kane's accusations against Diddy?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't just erase someone's past, even if those accusations were never proven. It's human nature to make connections and to draw conclusions based on what we know or think we know about a person.
So are you saying that Anna Kane's credibility might be questioned simply because of who her ex-husband is?
I think it's naive to think that Evander Kane's past won't be a factor in how people perceive Anna Kane's accusations.
Yeah.
Whether it's consciously or unconsciously, people might be more skeptical of her claims, thinking, well, she was married to a guy who was accused of some pretty terrible things, so maybe she's prone to making these kinds of accusations.
That's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah.
It almost feels like she's being punished for the alleged actions of her ex-husband.
It's a very complex situation,
Yeah.
and it highlights the challenges that we face as a society when we're trying to figure out, assess the validity of accusations, especially in cases where the individuals involved have these complicated histories.
It definitely makes you think twice about, jumping to conclusions.
Absolutely. This case is a stark reminder that we need to be really cautious about rushing to judgment.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to listen to all sides, consider all the evidence, and acknowledge the potential for our own biases to influence our perceptions.
As we're talking about all of this, it's impossible not to think about the Me Too movement and how this case kind of fits into that larger conversation.
Yeah, you're right. This case feels like a microcosm of the Me Too movement in a lot of ways. It brings up these questions about power dynamics, consent, and the challenges of holding powerful individuals accountable for their actions.
Yeah, we've seen a wave of accusations against powerful figures in recent years, from Hollywood to the music industry to the world of politics.
Right.
And it seems like with each new case, we're learning more about the complexities of these situations.
And we're also seeing how the legal system is really struggling to keep up with these evolving societal norms.
Yeah.
Cases like this challenge us to think critically about how we define and prosecute sexual assault, especially when these alleged incidents happened in the past.
It's almost like we're in this uncharted territory trying to figure out how to navigate these incredibly sensitive and complex issues.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the Me Too movement is not about blindly believing every accusation or destroying the lives of accused individuals.
Right.
It's about creating a culture where survivors feel safe to come forward, where their voices are heard, and where there are real consequences for those who abuse their power.
And how does Diddy's defense of people seeking a quick payday fit into all of this? Isn't that a common tactic used to discredit accusers?
It is a tactic that we've seen employed in many high-profile cases.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous one because it plays into these pre-existing biases and stereotypes about women who come forward with these accusations of sexual assault.
But how do you prove or disprove a motive like that?
Right.
It seems almost impossible to get inside someone's head and determine their true intentions.
It's incredibly difficult, and that's why cases like this often become these battles of narratives.
Right.
It's the accuser's word against the accused's word.
Yeah. And it's up to the jury to decide who they believe.
This whole thing feels like a tangled web with no easy way out.
It does.
We've got these historical allegations, a complex legal landscape, conflicting narratives, and the backdrop of the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
Overwhelming, to say the least.
It is overwhelming, but that's why it's so important to break down these complex issues into these manageable pieces.
Mm-hmm.
We need to look at the evidence, understand the legal arguments, and engage in thoughtful conversations about the broader societal implications.
And as we continue to learn more about this case, what are some of the key things that we should be paying attention to?
I think it's crucial to keep an eye on how the legal proceedings unfold.
Okay.
Will more evidence come to light? Will there be any key witnesses that could sway the jury? And of course, we need to watch how the public reacts to the developments in this case.
Because ultimately, public opinion can have a huge impact on the outcome of these types of cases, can't it? Absolutely. Public perception can shape the narrative, influence potential jurors, and even put pressure on prosecutors to pursue or even drop charges.
Wow.
It's a powerful force that can't be ignored.
So as we move forward, I think it's important to remember that this case is about more than just Diddy and Anna Kane.
Right.
It's about all of us. It's about how we as a society handle accusations of sexual assault, how we protect survivors, and how we hold powerful individuals accountable for their actions.
I couldn't agree more. This case is a reflection of who we are as a society.
Yeah.
It's a mirror that forces us to confront our biases, our beliefs, and our values.
It's a wake-up call, really. A call to be more informed, more empathetic, and more engaged in the fight for justice and equality. It's definitely been a journey, hasn't it? From the initial shock of the accusations to the complexities of the legal battle and the echoes of the Me Too movement, this case has really taken us down a fascinating and, frankly, disturbing path.
You know what strikes me is how this case, it isn't even isolated. It connects to a much larger conversation happening right now about power dynamics in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
We're really seeing a shift, a demand for accountability that goes way beyond individual cases.
You're right. It's not just about Diddy or Anna Kane.
Right.
This case is like a lightning rod.
Yeah.
It's attracting attention to the systemic issues that have allowed these kinds of situations to go on for so long.
And that's why, for me, the most thought-provoking aspect of this whole deep dive is how it reflects the evolving nature of the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
You know, it's no longer just focused on individual perpetrators, but on dismantling the systems that protect them.
That's a really powerful insight.
Yeah.
We're talking about challenging the structures that allow powerful individuals to basically operate with impunity, often silencing victims and discouraging them from coming forward.
Precisely. This case compels us to examine not just the alleged actions of individuals, but the environments that enable such behavior. It's about understanding this complex web of power, influence, and silence that can perpetuate abuse.
You know, when we first started this deep dive, I had so many questions.
Yeah.
And while we've uncovered a lot, I feel like I'm walking away with even more questions now.
That's the nature of truly engaging with complex issues, isn't it? The more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to uncover.
Right.
This case has exposed the layers of nuance and ambiguity that surround accusations of sexual assault, especially those rooted in the past.
And for our listener, I think the biggest takeaway here is that this case is far from over.
Right.
The legal proceedings are going to continue, potentially revealing even more evidence and shaping public opinion even further.
And regardless of the legal outcome, the conversation this case has started is going to continue to resonate.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that we all need to participate in thoughtfully, critically, and with a commitment to understanding the complexities at play.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What are your own thoughts on the implications of this case? How does it affect your view of the entertainment industry, the Me Too movement, and the ongoing struggle for justice and accountability? These are questions worth thinking about as we continue to navigate these really challenging times.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.